Happy Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Today we're going to jump into a juicy topic, which we've seen countless times in-house as consultants, which is the pitfalls of developer-led product strategy. But we have an antidote to help combat the challenges that exist or that come up when you have a tech-led
Yeah.
product strategy. And so
Yep.
we're going to look at some customer-centric practices that can prevent that churn, that waste, all that sort of thing.
The
So
bloat. Yeah. And
blow
by the way, developers, we love you. You are rock stars. That is,
not
I'm
to
not
take away
saying
from.
otherwise. Yep.
That's right. That's a good point. This is not to take away from your talent, your
Mhm.
ability, your ideas, and creativity as well, because
Yes.
that is definitely
That,
needed.
that innovation. Yep.
So let's start with the five pitfalls. So, how many instances have we seen where the focus was so narrowly driven or kind of pinpointed around that technology that it almost took away from the ideas themselves because
Yes.
it was such a focus on what features can this technology support? So that means that we're going to have to build these things, that sort of thing. You want to jump into one of the other five?
That is definitely. Can you hear me, Kenya? Am I
Yep.
coming through? Okay. That's definitely a big one because developers, they're tech minded. We need them to be tech minded. But when they are kind of running the show, from a strategy perspective, you can really get super duper focused on the technology and kind of lose the experience and what you're trying to gain or accomplish in the mix. So
Right. That's right.
definitely seen that, and I get it. I mean, it's where their minds are.
Yeah.
Our minds are over in the user centered world. So how do you bring those two together to keep things kind of on track where you don't waste too
Yeah.
much time or or you're not
Balance.
spending enough time somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the balance. And what that can also lead to is over engineering your
Over
products. We've
engineering.
talked about the research that's out there that shows that 80% of product features are not used. So then you end up having all of this, like you said earlier, bloat. When things don't have that level of market insight that they need, you end
Right.
up building what is feasible, what's cool, what you think is the right
Yeah.
solution, which then means that you tend to then fall into not focusing on the user experience of what you created.
Yes, and we've all seen where you need to have those research spikes by your development teams, your tech leads, that turn into months, because you
Yes.
do get so deep into it, and again, you just kind of lose sight of what your goals are, what your problem statements are, who your users are, and can get caught up in the coolness factor. I mean, heck, we get caught up in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
sometimes. But yeah,
absolutely. And then as you think about that churn and rework, this is all about the kind of internal operations within your organization. And so as you think about another challenge that comes up is the teams not working in concert.
right.
There's a level of distrust because some people or organize parts of the organization have a different idea of what the solution
Yeah.
should be, and it might not align to what the engineering team believes. And so you start to have that infighting, that churn, that constant kind of, let's go back to the table conversation versus let's look at making progress.
Exactly. And you have to have that collaboration. So you really can get in trouble when you do have the tech, whether it's designers or your product managers, and they
Mhm.
just throw general requirements over, and the tech leads, get real tied up in the research spikes and looking at the technology itself without, again, with losing sight. So one thing I've always found is what these teams almost need to coexist,
Yeah,
So take a developer with you. I know we'll talk about some of that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always jumping ahead, but they don't have that background on the UX focus or not truly on the UX focus. So how do you get them involved so that it becomes part of your technical leaders, your technical developers? It becomes part of their toolkit. They always keep that user in mind. So
yeah, so that's a nice segue into those things that you can do to help combat that tech driven solution, and the fact that that may mean, or in a lot of cases, that means that your solution doesn't align with what your customer is looking for.
Right.
So we're going to give you 3 steps that you can follow that are a cheat sheet around activities that you can perform and some of the details within those activities.
Yep.
So the first one is that you want to organize and facilitate a cross-functional or organize and facilitate more than one, obviously, but cross-functional team meetings. That's your first step. Your next step is to communicate within that meeting the purpose and goals. And we're going to talk about some of the details within that as well. And then finally, post-meeting, you want to send out those insights that came out of the meeting. What were the questions and answers? What does all of this mean to the solution and the organization? So we're going to talk about that as well. So let's first jump into the meeting itself. So you want to plan this meeting, and you want to make sure that you're going to have your engineering leadership, the right stakeholders from the technology organization present, and you want to make sure you have a scribe. Somebody's got to take some really good, copious notes while you're having these conversations.
Yes, and moderate as you're informing. You need people who can keep things kind of moving forward. We've all been in those meetings, where they kind of go off the track. So I think these are great meetings to get the different ideas in there, but it's also a great opportunity, I know, for many of our engagements. And when we were in-house, this is your time to convey, here's our user. What's that persona or personas? What are their pain points? Just what's their journey, so that everyone's kind of at least getting on the same page, that everything needs to be about the user. In addition to the technology, it's got to be about the user, but you've got to be on the same page, and don't assume there's a shared understanding of what that journey is, what those pain points are, who's involved, that sort of thing. So these are really great opportunities to be able to educate those technical teams as well about your users, what your problem statements are, what you're trying to accomplish.
And not everyone is going to be excited about being there. So you've got to make it engaging and interesting and tell stories. We've talked about that before. So come into the meeting, restate the goals of the meeting, place emphasis on the fact that customer feedback around what's been created or the concepts that have been created is the goal. You want to make sure that you focus on the fact that it's about that customer feedback. It's not about my opinion or what I like. This is what our customers or prospects are saying. And let's make sure that we understand it to then figure out how do we either pivot or double down on the direction that we're going in.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So we can tend to, as researchers, we can, get giddy about sharing all of the methods and ways in which we perform this research. Unless those questions are asked, don't go deep into all of the dirty details of your research. Yes. It's about, oops, I've turned it on and then turned it off. It's about who you engaged, how you engage them, how many people, and some of what the procedural kind of high level procedural steps are, but don't go into the dirty details.
Right. And sometimes I know, Kenya, you and I have done this. I've done it with clients as well. To make it a little more engaging, you have kind of let everyone bring what they think, if it's data, whatever that data may be, or experiences to the table, so that you're all kind of contributing around, okay, here's our research, but hey, support. QA, what are you encountering? What are pain points we need to consider from that perspective as well? So I just think it's just a great habit to get in. You need that cross-functional team at some point in a project to make sure you're on the same page and keeping on track.
Yes. And going back to what you said earlier, give a high level or a macro level view of the customer, your primary stakeholder that you're in the room to talk about from a customer standpoint. Provide a view into their journey. Just give a high level so that everyone can have the same context in the room around who and in what context are they using your product. And then you can zone in on those areas of that journey that you're focused on in the work that you performed. And when you think about the results that you're delivering, quantify them, turn them into numbers.
Turn them into numbers, yes. But get it out there now. Let's talk about what might the technical solutions be. Now you have more guardrails around what you're starting to explore, your tech teams, because you've now identified those problem statements. You've identified that audience.
Yes.
You've identified that journey and pain point. So it just makes it a lot easier to not end up with all that bloat, or not end up where you just are totally wound up on the tech front of things without thinking about that user. So
right. And when you talk about the kind of rounding out the conversation, recap the high level areas that you see as opportunities to address.
Yes.
What needs to be addressed and how, and deliver that in a prioritized fashion. What are the things that are highest impact? What are those low-hanging fruit? Work with the team. You might put out your perspective on those things, but then work with the team for them to tell you yes or no, that's feasible, it makes sense, that sort of thing. Make it a collaborative effort. But you can't just walk away telling stories without those stories having some sort of key takeaways that the team can actually act on.
Right. And that gives that development team an opportunity to think maybe outside the box, be a little bit innovative, or hopefully a whole lot innovative, but yet you've got those key pieces there. So, it really does give people that something to work with.
Yes. And so you're not done there. When the meeting's done, it's not, hey, we had fun, thank you for sharing kind of thing. Now you want to close the loop around the whole engagement by sending out a post-session email that's going to include, if you presented something, screenshots of whiteboards or information that was developed. It might be links to mural or Miro boards that you all worked on. But send out all those artifacts and any questions and answers that were really impactful to what's next, and your recommended next steps based on what you shared, what the team agreed upon. And make sure that you also to me, it's important that you put your stake in the ground in terms of, these are the things, if we do not do these things,
this is what happens. Yeah.
Yes. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a really good one. And I think of a recent project we did where they had really gotten tied up. It was very heavily dev-led. And they had really gotten tied up with certain tools for parts of this project. And it turned out it really wasn't addressing anything that the users, they didn't care once we got in there validating it. So when we did do those readouts and bring all that, QA in, development in, product management, UXers in the room, we were all on the same page and able to define, here's why this is important. I see why you're doing this, but this is why it's important. If you work on things not addressing this issue, you're kind of not going to move that needle. And that's one thing we discovered, coming in and trying to validate that kind of dev-driven piece of work, huge piece of work they were doing. And it wasn't the right direction, right? So that, I think that's always really good to say, You've got to address this feedback. That's great what you're doing. And I think that's about how blunt we were in that one. It's like you are going to lose people if you don't address this problem.
Yes.
That technical, that innovation you're doing over here, still, that's great. But they're telling you it's not what they want. So how do you get everyone back on that same page? Yeah.
You just gave me a great idea on a future session around the importance of baselining your product experience.
Yep.
Before you solicit the participation of your in-house research team or consultants like us. It goes a long way to first baseline. Where are the real issues?
Where are you?
The severity or extent of those issues. Where do we want to put our dollars based on the strategy of our organization? Like, there's a whole topic right there.
It's a whole topic. Yeah.
Yeah. And what you stand to lose when you don't do those things.
Yes.
So
right.
That's a future TBD topic.
Yeah.
So as a recap, I'll let you go ahead and recap each item.
So I mean, this one always have those cross-functional teams. And, I know this topic's been about, what happens when you have strictly tech dev-led strategy for your products. Organize and facilitate these cross-functional team meetings are important. It makes sure everyone's on the same page. Everyone's having some say from their perspective as well. But before you dive into, hey, we're just going straight for the technical solution. So I can't even overemphasize to me how important that piece is. And then communicate that, you're going to make me do all this. Switching it up. Communicate that meeting purpose and the goals, before, after. I know you're going to that one next, summarizing it. You've got to make it very clear what the objectives are. It's not just to go in there and, everyone's just
listening to you talk.
Listening you talk, or, okay, now we're having a brainstorming session with 50 people. No, let's clearly communicate what you hope to get out of any kind of a meeting like that. And then what you said earlier, sum it up. Email people, make sure everyone understands and it's in writing. What are the next steps? What came out of it? What were the resources that were used or referenced? A lot of people can't go to those that might have important things they want to contribute, or they need to know it too. So it's kind of like, a living document or a record somewhere of what's going on.
That's a great point. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, we've wrapped up today's conversation. You've got 3 strategies to use in order to help to turn things around from being so technology driven to be more customer focused or customer led in terms of the solution. If you have any questions for us, you know how to reach us at info@leangeeks.net. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.